Hello, everybody. We'll wait a few minutes for friends to come on. We got we lost Emily. She's like, we ain't doing this topic today. Hopefully she'll be back. Um, Hi, Debbie. Debbie, have you heard of the Amityville horror by chance? Here's Emily back.
Sorry.
Like the powers of Amityville are already working.
Yes.
Disappeared from the screen.
That house has done a lot stranger things when brought up.
Yeah, really though.
You know, it's funny that I want to think was my first big haunted, like real thing. And I only say real because there's debate, right, on what
Right.
happened. And I remember, like, I found the book about the house at a garage sale on a military base at Fort Campbell. Like, one of the neighbors had it. And I'm like, she's like, yeah, you just have it. You're a reader. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I always wanted to know the true story because, who cares about the Hollywood crap?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the true story itself is so interesting. Like, they didn't even really need to add to it.
No, they didn't. They did. But I found a book, I bought the book, and then I never read the book. And then I was going through on Audible to see, like, what titles are included with my membership. And that book was included. So I'm like, oh, download. So I listened to it and I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So it was actually scarier. It was, it's crazy because the true story is actually, to me, scarier than anything that Hollywood could have done.
Yeah.
Now, when you're saying the true, you're meaning the family murder, right? Is that what you're meaning?
Well, see, because there is the two parts to that whole tale, and I have issues with the Lutz's story, the one that made Hollywood. Right. I have issues with them. But the murder, DeFeo story, now that one's interesting. That part, that's the interesting part to me.
I agree with that sentiment. So the stuff with the Lutz is like, that's interesting too, of course. But what I think is so interesting about the stuff with I'm going to say their name wrong, but the original family that lived there and ended up getting murdered.
DeFeo.
Thank you. There were so many discrepancies or things that even like law enforcement didn't understand or couldn't fully solve, which is what makes it such a mystery. So
yeah, and that was one of my big points that I wrote down, and when I wrote my little research thing that I sent you guys, it was just, I don't know, it was crazy. And I don't think that the answers are ever going to come as to what truly happened in that house with the DeFeos. But when you get to the Lutz side of the thing, you get the Warrens in there, and then things start getting to the point where it's like, because everything with them is so controversial, and it's so easy to be a skeptic when Lorraine is saying anything.
Have you ever had a case where they're like, there's nothing here, or has everything always been demonic?
As far as I know, with her, everything's a demon.
Okay.
I mean, everything I've ever seen of her, she has always said, it's a demon. There's a demon here. There's human spirits, but there's also a demon here. And that's my problem. Like, I doubt it. Well, in this case, this is one of the few cases I might actually have to agree with her.
Yeah, I would say that as well. Just because of all the discrepancies. And for the people who aren't like super familiar with this, the Defoe, sorry, I think that's how I'm saying it. Yeah. Thank you. It's one of those things I'll never get right, even though it's such an easy name to say. But anyway, that was the original family that lived in the house. From what I understand, the son initially said that somebody broke into the house and murdered his family, right? And then
he said it was a mob hit.
Right. And then later.
Well, see, the day, okay, so he killed his family. We know that now.
Mhm.
So he did it. He went to work, and then he discovered the bodies after he had hung out with his friends, and they ran to a bar screaming for help.
Okay.
And he so that was so they were killed at, let me see here. Let me just look at my little paper I wrote here because I want to get the time right before I go pop it off at my mouth. 3:15 a.m. Is when he committed the murders. So it would have been later that day when he ran for help, and by the morning of the 14th, he had confessed to the murders. Because he had actually named a notorious mob hitman. Then the police found out that guy was actually out of state at the time.
No.
So that kind of threw that whole story out the window. And then he admitted to it. And his lawyer tried to build an insanity plea for him, saying that he did it, he killed his family in self-defense because the demons in his head told him to do it.
And isn't that what he later on claimed? Because I just watched whoever has Discovery Plus. I watched about 3/4 of a documentary and then fell asleep, unfortunately. But I'm familiar with the story anyway. But there's a really good documentary on that where there's actually footage that wasn't viewed in other like coverings of this case and stuff. So if you wanted to watch that just to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about, see the pictures and the footage we're talking about. What's so interesting is like the son looks just like a normal guy, like in my opinion, at least. Like if I would have seen that guy, I would never have thought he would have, committed a murder or anything. And it's crazy too, because all of his friends were kind of saying, yeah, he could be irrational sometimes, but right, like he'd be fine, or he always was under control. And then, you'd wonder, like, is it the house that they've lived in that is causing him to be irrational this whole time because there is this demonic entity, or was this like a mental health issue? You know what I mean? That it's so hard to gauge with this stuff. And it's really dangerous too, because you don't want to like write off things that are a mental health issue as a paranormal issue. But at the same time, like, obviously we believe in that stuff. So it's kind of a hard line to walk.
So in his case, I think it's both. Because there's so much telling me that, demonic forces were involved. But I think he also had the mental issues, which made him an easier target.
100%.
And plus, when I was doing my research, it turns out that he did have some issues with his dad. Like there was issues between them. So he already had problems. And so I'm going to jump right into my thoughts on that case, because obviously the most well-known part of the Amityville horror is going to be the Lutz case. And we're definitely going to talk about that because I have opinions. But for me, so the facts are that, he shot 8 shots out of a .35 caliber rifle. That's a high caliber rifle. If demonic forces or something else wasn't involved, then I don't see how each and every single family member was asleep when they were killed, and none of them woke up. None of them were drugged.
They were all face down, actually. If I'm remembering correctly, they were face down.
Yep, they were all asleep on their stomachs. They weren't drugged. The toxicology reports came back, said they were all clear. But even crazier to the point than that, 6 rounds were shot from a high-power rifle, and not a single neighbor heard the gunshots. But they heard the DeFeo's dog barking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So maybe he did have mental health issues, and that's what caused him to commit the murders. But how did nobody in the house hear the shots, and how did nobody in the neighborhood hear the shots?
Right. Like they said, none of the family had tried to escape or run. Because I think he was actually claiming that the demon handed him.
He did. He said
the rifle, right?
He said that a hooded figure handed him the gun and told him to do it. And then once he started, he couldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the case of neighbors, one gunshot you can write off as something else. 8, no, you can't. You can't.
And especially the neighborhood that they were in, right? Because from what I understand, it was a super good neighborhood.
It was, I don't know what it's like now, but back then it was considered a high-class neighborhood. So, and so for me, I'm like, he was probably insane, but at the time, other forces were at work against him that made him do what he did. They just used the anger that was obviously, they used what was already there and magnified it. Because, is that a good enough reason to plead insanity? Probably not. I mean, he was temporarily insane, but he knew what he was doing. In the end, he knew what he did because he described everything to a T. When you truly go insane, you black out and you don't remember what happened. So in his case, I'm like, well, you knew what happened. Maybe you didn't have control truly, but you knew what happened. So, but the judge didn't think he was insane either. So he was sentenced to 6 back-to-back terms of 25 years to life in prison. And he died in 2021 and he was still locked up. So,
oh, that's recent.
Yeah. So, the whole truth may never come out, obviously, because now the only other person who truly knows what happened is dead. But there's just too much for me to believe that there was not some demonic forces working in that house. And besides that, and besides the Lutzes, when you look somewhere in the book or one of the documentaries I watched, they said that somebody had done research and found that some tragedy struck every single family that ever lived in that house. And I mean, the DeFeo story is what started this mess that, we know, but there were other families who lived there.
Well, and that
didn't spark all the crazy.
I'm going to look that up right now because that's going to be part of my fun sucking. And Emily, if you want to go over what you think of it, because me, I guess with true crime, back in the day, I thought about going and being a profiler at one point just because human behavior is so interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So is the paranormal, but This is one of those instances where I'm like, what would make that family so special that a demon piqued them? You know, I'm more likely to believe, yes, there was issues with the father and all the kids, but particularly Ronnie, because he was the oldest, especially when it came down to the family business. Ronnie was not going to have any part or say. And so there was tension there. There was favoritism between the kids. So there was a lot there, right? So if there's mental issue, you've got that stress. Then if you have like an earthbound spirit in there, who's going to poke the hell out of that? And since he would go to bars, guess what kind of ghost you're going to come home? Who's going to help screw that up? Like, I do not believe in a demon whatsoever for that house. And I want to look up and see what these tragedies are, because I know since then it's been reported that like ever since they moved out and the house was blessed again, like there's been nothing, and the house has been remodeled and sold. And I'm like, so why this one little time? And if it's a demon, if I'm a demon coming in to wreak havoc, I'm going to do the whole damn block. I'm not picking one family.
That's true.
And I'm
That's
going to go house to house. I'm taking over the block. I'm not taking over a house. You know, aim high in your quest. It's world domination.
See, I can see where you're going with that, but for me, I don't see how a human spirit would be powerful enough to block the sound from the neighbors hearing the gun. When it was proven that there was no silencer used, somebody would have heard those shots.
Just like when a voice in my old house would yell my name down the stairs from the top of my stairwell by my bedroom door, but I wouldn't hear it, but the people downstairs would, and they would yell up the stairs wanting to know what I wanted. Same way.
That's so funny. Yeah. And you know,
that's on the other side though. This is in this world, like a man-made gun going off right now. If somebody shot outside my door, everybody watching this would hear it. Mm-hmm. Especially if it was such a high caliber. The neighbors should have heard the gun. They're not.
One can make the argument, though, that, you know, they thought it was fireworks, or, you know what I mean? They didn't hear screaming. They didn't hear the sun run out. So it's like, you know, maybe they could have written it off. I mean, I get it was 3:15 in the morning, so I totally understand somebody hearing that. But
in November,
right? So, you know, I don't know. It's hard to think, because it's like in that neighborhood, would they just be like, oh, that kind of stuff doesn't happen here? You know what I mean? There wasn't screaming. Nobody called the cops. They didn't see anything strange around the house. I mean, it is strange that they would mention the dog barking, though, like you said, at 3 a.m, but not the gunshots.
Yeah, that's what got me.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I do think maybe there would be, you know, maybe some kind of demonic activity happening in the house, but it is like what Melissa said, you know, you'd think it would continue to happen. And furthermore, why did the first blessing that the Lutzes did, and in the only time the father ever talked about it, there were flies attacking him and this happening and that happening, but then the second time it worked. You know, if the blessing isn't going to take care of the demonic entity the first time, I am skeptical to believe that it would take care of it the second time.
Because it was the same priest, right?
Well,
here's that might be a Richie question.
Here's my so when we get into that, the Lutzes themselves have come out and said that some of their story was fabricated. They embellished. The priest, in some interviews, have said that, you know, everything that they said happened. He went in, he heard the voice tell him to get out. He got sick. He got the boils or the, you know, stuff on his hands. Mm-hmm. In interviews, he said, I never stepped foot in that house.
I would be very curious to know why.
So there is my biggest problem with that. Did that priest ever actually go in that house? Was the first blessing actually something that happened, or was that
Right.
the embellishment? Was he on, you know, for the times that he said that he did it, was he just, were they paying him to say that? Because
Mm.
they were in financial trouble and they thought this was a way to make bank.
Yeah, I mean, why else?
Um,
Because it's sus, right? Like, who's like,
yeah,
like this house that the murder took place in. This, not just a murder. Sorry, 6. Okay,
yeah,
right? 6 of them, and I'm gonna keep all of the furniture. I'm gonna keep the
yeah,
beds that the children were murdered in, and have my kids
exactly.
sleep in there, right? And they said, I asked our children if they cared, and they were like, no, it's fine. I'm sorry, but if I asked
Yeah,
my 7-year-old, oh, are you okay living in a house where all these people were murdered? Like, he would absolutely not be okay with it.
yeah, no.
So,
The oldest, the never mind. I was getting ready to go back in time too far. But yeah, no. That part was messy to me, and they said that the Lutzes were willing to move in because they weren't superstitious. And then you look into some more of the history, and it said, well, George Lutz had a history of dabbling in the occult, and it's like,
Yep.
okay, so what's what? Are they superstitious? Are they not? And if there something was in the house, that did attack the Lutzes, is it something that George unwittingly brought on himself because he didn't know what the heck he was doing? He was just dabbling but didn't understand it. Uh,
yeah, or did him moving in ramp up the activity because of the stuff
yeah,
that he was
and
doing, you know?
that's something else. And they only lasted in the house 28 days. So
Hmm.
to say if they
Quitters.
had stayed longer, if worse things wouldn't have happened.
We don't quit
Right.
around here.
Yeah, well, stop.
So herbs and stuff had put up, like, I had a kitchen fall off the wall, shelf fall off the wall with the microwave on it in the middle of the night. 3 of us plus 3 dogs slept through the whole thing. So, and I know, like, cold air sound travels better. So November, that sound should have went, but at the same time, how big is that house? How far away are the houses? How thick are those house walls, right? Because newer construction houses are thinner
Mhm.
Hmm.
than old construction. And that house, because I went and found the original people, it was built in 1924. So that's going to be a thicker fabrication than what's out there now. How far
Yeah.
away are they? Where in the house? So there's a lot there. And I don't think anybody's ever done like ballistic testing where they stand in the house and fire blanks out of the same type of gun with people in other, like, did you hear it? Just to see and test that, that's where the science part of me is like, ooh, let's do that.
Yeah,
Um, but I would be curious, and Richie, this
I
would be
would
a you
too.
question, but the surrounding neighbors, what paranormal were they have going on? Did they notice it? Were they having it? Was it overshadowed by, here's this book and now this movie that's making all this money on this one property?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I really think it's more earthbound, especially earthbound's
to,
following Ronnie home from bars,
that's
feeding on
that's
this energy. And then when they're all up at work and at school, they're dicking around with the neighbors.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So, oh,
didn't.
this house, because it's empty, had no more activity. Well, yeah, because they're in the neighbor's house now. So I'm interested to know, like, what the
Yeah,
neighbors had going on before
I
and maybe after.
so I didn't see anything. I didn't think to look into that part, but I feel like the residents that we're talking about had so much going on in it that even if other people had said anything, it would have been completely overshadowed by the craziness inside this house. Because, and especially in the Lutz case, it was some really outlandish claims. I mean, even for me, who says, I believe everything can happen, and I believe that and I do believe that in some cases, stuff like what they said happens. I just don't think it did to them. But I just think that everybody else would have been sort of like overshadowed by the stuff in this house because it was so completely terrifying, but I never really looked into it, which is something I should do. But
I feel like, oops, sorry, go ahead.
If Lorraine Warren isn't interested in the house, then why should I be? I'm just kidding. She's the expert. No.
So I guess the way to really solve all of this, I'm just going to put up some copy paste. The house still stands because I'm like, the way to solve this is to go buy it. And then like,
they changed the address.
They did change the address, but come on. All you got to do is look at the neighbors and go, it's this one.
Yeah.
But they did purposefully take out. I always thought those windows were kind of creepy looking, just in the structure.
Oh, they absolutely were. It looks like the house is looking at you.
Yeah, and in a pissed off way. Like same house, same. But it still stands because I was seeing some conflicting at first where it's like it's been torn down. No, it's just been so renovated to purposely look different to keep people like me from like going and stalking the house.
Still gonna do it.
The neighbors and anybody, since then, there's no peace. There was no peace in the neighborhood because everybody wanted to see the Amityville horror house. And so now it's like, okay, we're going to have to make some changes, do what we have to get people not to be able to find it again. Because,
right.
I mean, it's just like the Conjuring house. These people just want to live in peace. Let them alone, But that case again is so famous that paranormal people like us are like, and even me, I'm like, I want to go. I'm going to go. I don't care if somebody lives there or not. Let's be friends. I'll stay the night.
I will house it. Go on vacation.
Right.
Yes.
I wonder, it's worth mentioning too, like because of all of the upheaval that these murders caused, right? Because of all of the discrepancies in the story, because of what people were saying about Ronnie, one could say, hey, the neighbors had activity and it was so stigmatized and there was so much that happened that they just didn't want to talk about it. Because look what happened, right? Like they don't want to come off like in that time. If something like that was happening to you, then maybe you were dabbling, like we were saying with the Lutzes, like maybe you were doing something to bring that upon yourself. So in order to like save their reputation, save their family, all of that, and avoid all the people coming around, they could have just not talked about it. So
tail writers, right? Like, oh, of course, now you want to so now you would be seen as the second,
right? Especially after the Lutzes and all of that, it's like, well, why would I come forward now?
I don't have a book.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to get anything out of it. So
it would look like a money grab for sure at that point.
It would. I think all things might be possible, and I know. Richie, I think you and I might have slightly like different ends of it, but I still think there's paranormal. So I don't want it to seem like, Richie, you're wrong. It's not at all. I just don't think it's.
I wouldn't care if you said that or not because I know I'm not wrong. I'm so convinced that I'm right. But I seen in the comments, somebody said that Ronnie is definitely schizophrenic. And yeah, absolutely. I agree that, but for me, that is part of what could have helped, whatever spirit is in that house, push him over the edge. Maybe he was, but he had some small amount of control over it.
True. And I could be wrong, but didn't he grow up in the house?
Poking until, he started getting poked by the bear.
I don't
or the
remember
bear
if he
started
did
getting
grow
poked
up.
in. You know what I
New
mean?
tab, Google.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I'm
I
curious
didn't
if he grew
see
up
that
there,
part.
because if he did, and I'm
Then,
again not one to ever say like a mental health thing is like a paranormal thing. Like you should always get help. If you're hearing people talk to you, just go talk to somebody.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
right, like not condoning ignoring mental health. But that being said,
No.
if he grew up in that house from childhood on, one could argue experiencing all of the paranormal activity could have, affected his mental health.
That's
He could have been being influenced from childhood. Like, who really knows? I mean,
yeah.
again, not to take away accountability from like a murderer, like, but
Oh no, he definitely needed to be held accountable
right. But
for
there's
it.
just a lot in there. Because I do think that maybe entities like that, of course, they're going to be attracted to people who might be a little bit more likely to carry out what they want, right? It's easier for them, especially someone who's constantly using substances. It's a lot easier to influence somebody like that. So,
Right.
I didn't realize Ronnie DeFeo lived until 2021.
Yeah.
yeah, we were saying he just died so recently. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
what
like
I
the
was saying.
Lexes died early 2000s. But
Because
he,
in the documentary,
Yeah.
they had him older. I mean, not like old, but like
Mhm.
they showed him, not as a young adult being interviewed
Yeah.
and stuff. So, now, Richie, I'm curious too, because I had heard that the priest had only been interviewed one time. The priest that blessed the house, Father, I forget his name, but
Yeah, I forgot his name too. That's why
yeah, but I
showed you.
thought he only did the one interview.
No, he spoke multiple times. If you like dig in, you can find other times where he talked about it.
weird.
But for the sake of like the documentary and the books, they say he only gave one interview, which is not true.
Okay.
Because I seen it, and it was 100% him. Sometimes he said that, or like for the documentary and in the book, he said he went and blessed the house. He heard a voice tell him to get out, and then that's when he had left, and he told the Lutzes not to go into one of the rooms, basically leave that room alone. And then he got really sick, and he got boils or something all over his hand. And he couldn't get his fever to break. He couldn't get the boils to go away. And he finally got them to, started getting back on track. And then in the meantime, apparently the Lutzes had tried to call him several times. He tried to call them, and there was nothing but static. And then the one time that they actually did get to speak to each other, they got to talk for a certain amount of time, and then there was static again. And after that, his health declined again. And then in other interviews, he's like, I never stepped foot in that house. I don't know what all that's about. And I'm just like, okay, so did you or didn't you? Like,
Yeah, which is it?
You're a priest, you're a man of God. Why are you sitting here telling lies? Like, one of those two things you said is a lie, but you said both of them. So which one is it? Which one is true?
Right.
The
The part
recovering
that
Catholic.
cracks me.
I was going to
Go
say
ahead.
the recovering Catholic wants to know if the priest went to confession for lying.
I would also like to know. What's funny to me is how he goes into the room, right? The sewing room. And he says that there's growling. He doesn't feel it right. He hears "get out" in a demonic voice, blah, blah, blah. And then he gets out and he's like, just don't sleep in there. You'll be fine. It's fine. Just don't sleep in there. Like, sir, why are you doing all that? Like that.
Right. You're
Like
a priest.
house,
Can we
your
not just go ahead and
problem.
take care of
Just board that door up. Don't go in there. You'll be
Just don't worry
perfect.
about it. It's fine.
Yeah, and his doctor told him that everything that was happening to him was stress induced. So it's like, okay, so if that's the case, then fine. If you really did go there and this all really did happen? Did the actual like entities in the house do this to you, or did you just freak out so bad over the so-called demonic voices that you messed yourself up?
Speaking
And
as
it's like,
somebody, and I'm sure all of us with autoimmune can say, stress drives awful things, hives, blisters. If
mhm,
Yeah.
you have lupus, guess what? You get blisters, you get,
Yep.
like boil looking.
yeah.
So maybe, and let's say this was what, 1979, 1980. There's been a lot of medical advancement.
Oh,
I just looked
absolutely.
up, he died of heart disease. Because I was hoping they would say, like, oh, complications from, and go, here we go. So we don't know. And how much of that was exaggerated. Maybe he had a couple
Yeah,
of hives, but like they're boils now for
right.
the book.
And I was thinking that too, is because and like I said, did it even happen at all? Because of the fact that there's times where he said he never stepped foot in the house. So,
Right.
did he go in? Did he have the boils or the hives or, whatever? Or did he not go in the house? I mean,
I mean, the
like,
first thing I would have done would be take pictures of it, seek medical treatment so I could have records of what happened.
yeah,
Like if he planned on actually talking about this, would he not have like done something? Because if it took so long to get rid of these boils, like I'd be taking pictures, I'd have some proof so that when someone questioned me later on,
hmm,
I could show, that this is what happened. So, but then the other part of
exactly.
it too that's confusing is if the Lutzes were in such financial trouble, how did they even have the money to like pay off this priest like we're talking about? Or did he experience something horrible and maybe even get backlash from the Catholic Church or something for kind of corroborating some of this, and then he backed down
Yeah.
because his reputation was
No,
getting yeah.
that's possible because, as I understand it, even when he was still saying that he did go in, um, his higher ups were like completely denying the church's involvement in it at all. Like he was never there. So
Right.
I'm like, okay, so
They-
like you said, that makes me I want to wonder at the same time, while I'm questioning was he ever actually there, because of that, you're right. Was he actually there? Did he really experience all this horror, but then was forced to back off and lie and say, no, I wasn't involved in that. I never stepped foot in the house because he was getting so much backlash from the church itself,
Right.
So it's like, there's so much that plays into this. And it's like, because of that, we're at the point where it's like, what's true and what's not.
Mhm.
We don't actually know.
And all of the main people, I was going to say characters. I'm like, that's not right because this is all true, right? We know the DeFeo murders and the Lutzes, they were real people, but
Yeah.
they have all passed.
Mhm.
So, there is no, well, let's get Greg. Greg, we need to meet him. We have
Right.
questions.
The Lutz kids are still alive. One
Did
of them
they?
That's true.
one of them lives in New York, and the only time that he talked about it after he was grown and everything, he would say was, that house ruined my life, and he left it at that.
Probably from all the
Yeah.
fame and
It's
notoriety,
it's
infamy,
vague. That's
Yeah,
vague.
that is very.
No.
I mean,
paranormal aside.
it's a safe answer because it's like, okay, did that ruin your life because of all the activity, or did it ruin your life because your parents lied and you got all this publicity and
Yeah.
you couldn't walk down the street for a long time, people being like, oh my God, you lived in that house, like, you know, for me, that would be how it ruined my life. Was like,
Mm-hmm.
you
I'd be
won't leave
changing
me
my name,
alone.
my
Yeah.
last name.
Now, did Ronnie DeFeo maintain his story like the entire time
No.
he was incarcerated? No. Okay,
No.
that was my other
It's not,
question.
my research showed that it said that he changed his story several times throughout his time in prison. So I'm like,
Yeah, how
yeah,
much of that's mental illness or just trying to
yeah.
be,
I mean,
to
at this,
some reason to
Relevant.
get out. Yeah.
at this point, he's just trying to keep it fresh and stay relevant. Well, I guess not at this
Probably bored.
point, because he's dead now, but
He
I'm
was
gonna make my own
bored.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm gonna
I'm gonna make my
search
own
this
damn
shit
book.
up again. I'm bored. Let's see what I can
I
whip
mean,
up.
he was in prison from 1974 to 2021, so
Right.
he had a lot of time.
Yeah.
He had a lot of spare time to get creative.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
And I agree with Herbs and stuff. She's like, I think it was to protect the church. And I know that the Catholic
Mhm.
Church still has a pretty hard line before they're going to admit something is demonic.
Yeah.
yeah,
They kind of stay away from that. They do maintain exorcists, right, that go and take care of things, but they're hardly ever dispatched. And I say that because there is somebody local that I know that a family member of theirs is one of these people. And just knowing Marianne, she knows people,
Mhm.
and it's so very rare for that type of person to go into effect because,
yeah,
honestly, like the number of times that something like that really, really happens. And
yeah.
to be honest too, in all serious opinion here, I'm sure the Catholic Church is still trying to recover from all of the sexual crap,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Last thing they need now is like, oh, so and so was killed during exorcism, or so and so was in an exorcism.
Yeah.
In reality, like, oh, it wasn't an exorcist or a demon. It was like some, pick a disorder out of the DSM-5 that wasn't being medicated and treated properly, and
Right.
Because sadly, that happens.
Mhm.
You know, especially back in the times. Actually, it was more recently that not all of the disorders started actually getting names put to them and understood. You know, not too long ago, it was everybody's like, oh, you're possessed, or you're being punished by God because of something, or you are, you know, you're a bad child, or you're just you're a bad child, and you could have gotten locked up in an insane asylum. Every
That's
one
a
of
really good point.
every one of us would have been locked up. They would lock every one
That
of
is
us.
a good point. Like the fear of talking about that stuff because you don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't get the treatment back then that maybe you would get now. So that is super relevant too.
Yeah.
And the church was so much more, I don't want to say it was like more important back then because of course like it's super important to other people now, but I feel like it was so ingratiated just like in society in general that like if the church turned on you, like everyone was going to turn on you.
Yeah.
And
Like the
being
whole
such a nice
congregation.
neighborhood. Yeah. And it being such a nice neighborhood, I'm sure it was very close knit and I'm sure that there was a lot of like societal stuff going on.
I
So
got something to say about that.
any strong-willed woman would have been too.
Yeah. The minute you
Hysteria.
question, man, yeah.
So, back in the day, a woman could be dropped off and left in an asylum, no questions asked, just because her husband was sick of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something hysteria.
They wouldn't ask a single question. They
Yeah. Definitely not
And
because they were
kids
just like,
too. Kids.
yeah, you didn't want to. There you go. Like the point, and the thing is too is, it would just be like a poorhouse, right? So it was anyone with mental illness, anybody who couldn't, kids that they couldn't afford to feed, like all of that. So there was a lot, and I'm sure I don't think that happened in the 70s, but I think it was earlier than that.
Dropped off a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think Karen too. She's like, oh shit. Chris is like, I think the Warrens really created most of the lore, you know.
And that's
I
possible.
think they were, I'm not saying that they never ran into big bads, but the fact that the majority, like, how did you have the luck to always find only the big bads all the time?
That is my
Well,
point.
and also the
That's
person
why-
corroborating his story is your husband or wife. Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying.
Here's the thing: you're a medium. Your husband is a demonologist. Not that that's a real thing, but your husband's a demonologist, and he can, he can get rid of this stuff, or he knows he knows what to do. So every case that you guys go into, you're going to find a demon, so your husband has something to do, so that your husband is as important in this case as you are.
She's like, I am sick of him around the house. I'm gonna go find a demon for you too.
Well, and that money.
That's just like Rob Zombie still making movies so that his wife can act.
Oh, we're gonna call that one out. Okay. I can't do Rob Zombie in his gore. I know that's not very big and bad and gothy of me, but I cannot hang with his gore, especially after having a kid. Like, I can't. I'm like, ew.
He can't make
why?
He can't make a movie, but he continues to do it so that his wife can star in it.
Yeah,
And
because he labeled everything big and bad. I see what you're saying too, because I mean, it is it's sus. Okay, she walks in and she's like, all this activity is happening, and I think that there's a demon, but I know a guy. Don't worry, he's right here in the car.
I got him on speed dial. Hold on.
Like,
exactly.
Stop doing the dishes and come over here.
Yeah.
Am I saying? Okay. Will I sit here and tell you that she never ran into a big bad? No, because she probably did, but not in every single case.
Right. Yeah. That's where I'm like, I'm not saying they never did, but
yeah, I'm sure they did.
It's just astronomically. Like, they should have been playing the lottery with that type of luck in their life.
Right.
Right. I agree. And since people didn't know about the mental health conditions and medical stuff, like, it was so easy. I mean, even today, there are still groups of faith-based people, right, that just refuse to believe in certain cultures that certain things can happen. There's certain cultures that, like, Downs is not really a thing, and it's a demon causing the attack, on that child for something the parent did. And I'm like, it's called genetics, honey. It's DNA.
Literally a chromosomal thing that's happening, but okay.
There's nobody after you and taking it out on a poor, innocent child just to mess with you. Like, you are not that special. Stop it.
Right. Seriously, though.
Please take care of your child accordingly. But yeah, I think so much. I'm so glad we have better medical stuff now and better understanding of how people do.
It was ridiculous.
Look at that.
My thing is, it's not an actual title. It's something you either give yourself, or somebody's like, oh my gosh, you know a lot about this. Especially in his, it's not an official title. That's my thing with that. And especially in his case, I mean, there are people who know a lot. And if I needed help with demonic stuff, I would call them quick and in a hurry. Because I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know a damn thing about it. If I ran into a demon right now, I would not know what to do.
Somewhere in all of these books, and they're thinner, so it might take me a while to find it. Maybe I will find it before the next live. Like, there was a paranormal convention that was in Pittsburgh that I went to, and in the outer hallway was a priest who was a demonologist, and I purposely bought his books and was talking with them because it is fascinating to me, like my magic and all of that. Because I'm like, so yes, there is an understanding that they are there. Do they operate in horror movie fashion? No, but it was just very fascinating, and I purposely bought his books and was talking with him just because it was so interesting. So I'm gonna have to find where they are. So I'm like, here's a guy, and then they're like, hey, would you like to come on and maybe talk?
That'd be so fun.
That would be really cool.
So I mean, they're out there, and I fully, respect
Yeah.
in what they do. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
I just think Amityville was just blown up with some
Yeah.
earthbound, some mental illness, and then some really
Yeah.
good publishers or
Oh,
publicists
Yeah.
yeah,
that are
Well,
like,
it's also
absolutely.
the thing too. It's sometimes it's like anytime there's a negative spirit, oh, it's a demon, because it's evil,
Yeah,
it's a demon. So the
yeah,
whole categorizing of it is tough too.
yeah,
What differentiates between a demon and an evil earthbound spirit
right.
unless you're able to communicate. Um,
Yeah. Because it's
it's hard.
impossible for a human to be evil.
Right.
they
Yeah.
and so
You
Chris
know.
is like, I think the time that they came from had a very different view of the paranormal, so all of it seemed evil. I think later in life she realized, meaning Warren, that not all was evil and not everything was a demon. Um, and I do know, like they had, and I think that museum still runs, even though they've both
Mhm.
passed. Like
Yeah.
It
they
does.
have that
Their
Raggedy Ann
son.
doll. The fact that it's a
Yeah.
doll is more scary to me than anything attached to it. Like I hate
Oh,
dolls,
Annabelle.
I hate
Yeah.
dolls. Oh
but
God, I hate dolls.
all of these evil possessed things that they've collected from all of these demonic, and I'm like, if it is so demonic, why are you just, it's here, don't look at it too long, don't
Yeah,
breathe at this one, don't say this one's name.
yeah,
Like if
Right.
it's that easy to unleash this evil on the world, then why is it just sitting in your den?
Yeah.
Like,
I
I don't
think
care.
with the museum, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Richie,
Yeah,
but I think their son-in-law, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the Warrens' son-in-law is who runs it. So I watch the
okay.
overnight channel sometimes on YouTube. How do I put this in a way that's it's okay. It's not like my go-to paranormal channel to watch. I'll just say that. But I'm trying
you
to say this
justifying
like,
why you watch this?
yeah, I'm just trying to say this nicely. But they did a thing where it was like for Friday the 13th, it was actually donation based. So like the more money they got donated to, I think it was for World Hunger or something like hunger. But they stayed like the longer people kept donating, the longer they stayed overnight in this museum with the Annabelle doll. They got like a Dybbuk box, like all of that, because they just mess around. Like they don't really. They're not cautious. I'll say that at all. So,
Which is
um,
foolish.
huh?
Which is
What is
completely foolish.
Yeah, it is foolish. It's very foolish, but also very entertaining for me. So
Yeah.
I was like sitting there watching it, but the museum is open, and yeah, they actually stayed in there, I think for like 3 days or longer than that. So they were in there like straight. But the son is the one who took over it. So it is still running. But obviously, Ed and Lorraine are dead, so they're not the ones running it
Do
anymore.
they haunt their
Yeah.
museum?
Yeah, I wonder.
You couldn't.
That's funny.
You couldn't pay me enough to go near Annabelle. I can't do it.
Yeah, that was
Like
one of the things we thought about doing a subject on was like,
Like,
haunted
yeah.
objects
vessels.
or possessed
Yeah.
objects, right?
And I don't care how much protection you have around these dolls. I'm not going there because it's still a damn doll.
Right. Like Annabelle's creepy, but Robert, oh my God, that's the most terrifying looking doll I've ever seen in my life.
I'm more afraid of just the doll
Yeah.
than anything paranormal around it, because it's
That's the
no.
crazy thing is whatever paranormal is attached to it, I'm cool. Let's go. I can do it. But it's the doll itself. I don't want nothing to do with it.
No.
I like how no one at any point has cleansed the doll, has tried to like, they're just like, what, you want to live there?
Burn it.
Just yeah,
burn
right.
it. Yeah.
friend-
Fire cleanses everything.
My
Road
friend's
trip to the
mom.
museum.
My friend's mom has a room full of Raggedy Ann dolls.
Why?
And,
is she okay? Is she on meds?
My friend knows that I can't stand dolls, but she knows I love books. Her dad has every book ever written by Stephen King, and it's on a shelf outside this room. And now I wasn't paying attention to this room. I'm focused on the books. And then something said, Richie, turn around. So I looked, turn around, and I did the biggest F word I've ever said in my life. And I walked out the door, and her mom's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "No." And she's like,
What's
"Why?" I
wrong
said,
with
"You have a full of Annabelles. What do I want to be in your house where you're going to get killed?"
I think the haunted or cursed being fascinating, and I think it's more of a kind of like some of the episodes Marianne and I recorded in pocket where people just like you have that favorite thing, and so people would be obsessed and making sure somebody doesn't pick up that thing that you love, that they're going to mistreat it. I think that's more of a thing, right? Because who would want to trap themselves in the body of a doll? It's more of like, this was my favorite thing as a kid. I died young. So, I'm going to hang around with it. And, I get more energy when people are doing certain things. So I'm going to twist that head a little bit. I'm going to make it fall off on the floor. I'm going to mess with people so I get that energy.
Melissa, you're going to get us all into big trouble one of these days.
I am going to have so much fun when I die before I go into the light.
I guarantee it.
Just so much fun. But then again, me and a couple of friends have talked about the Earthbound hit squad. We're going to go take out certain people, who
I like that.
I like that too.
I
I have a list of people I'm going to visit after I die.
Like I will become the Dexter in the afterlife. Like
Love
you mess with little kids, guess what? You can't defend yourself very well against me. So again, incriminating myself before crimes even happen.
Hey, you'll be dead. It's fine.
Not like you can arrest.
Woo, you prayed at me. Let's see. And that's where I think too, just with the priests and like one working, not one, the other one not working, like depending on, and I wonder like, okay, did the first one even happen? But also part of me, and even Marianne, I think has said this, like, if that entity or Earthbound doesn't follow that said religion, why would that type of blessing work anyway?
Right. Yeah. I mean, if it's me and a Catholic priest is like, you need to leave, I'd be like, okay, like, what
you, sir,
or what?
Show me the way out the door.
Yeah, right. Bring a witch in here. I'll be like, all right, girl, bet. Like, I'm out of here. I'll listen.
All right, don't aim for my eyes with the salt. Damn, I'm leaving.
Exactly. Once they bring the witch in, they mean business. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go hang out over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, old guy, not scary.
No, don't touch me, old man.
Angry magical woman. Okay, I'll go.
Yeah. Well, it's almost 11 o'clock already. So
wow.
We've had fun, I think. And I did look up the museum, the Warren Museum. According to Google and a few sites, says it's like permanently closed. So
okay,
there will be no road trip to Connecticut, at least not.
Yeah, it must just not be open to the public then, huh?
Well, I think that some of the stuff, I don't, if I remember hearing correctly, now I could have heard wrong, and but as I understood it, some of the stuff from the museum, if not the whole museum itself, is actually ran by Zach Bagans now, and he changed the name.
Really?
So maybe the Warrens Museum is closed and it's just opened under the other name, which I don't know. That's what I heard, but like I said, you can't believe everything you hear.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me because he buys everything that he can. But
yeah,
that's all I'm gonna say. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm keeping my mouth shut so we don't get sued.
We're not saying anything bad. We're just saying he buys things.
I've heard that he did, but who knows? I mean,
yeah,
there's so many rumors out there about everybody. I know he runs and he owns a museum, but is it?
That's the one. I know there's one in Vegas. I'll have to send you the link to the overnight live stream. Obviously not to like sit there and watch the whole thing because it's 3 days long. But just so that you can see the area and see like the museum they're in, because I might be wrong, but I think I'm remembering it correctly that, like I said, their son-in-law is the one that runs it now, but it must not be open to the public. I think maybe they just have all these haunted objects. Like, I'm really not sure. But yeah, maybe next.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just wondering, do we have a plan for next week? Talk about the Conjuring house, maybe, or something similar?
I was thinking. I mean, the Conjuring obviously would be really good, but since we were talking about it a little bit earlier, maybe we can talk about the real Exorcist case.
Oh, I like that.
It was actually a little boy.
Yes. Yeah, it was a little boy, and he's still alive. He just changed his name, but we can talk more about that later.
I like how Chris is like, it is different.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, that's good to know.
That was like my second like big paranormal, like that I investigated or learned about as a young person. Like, I have a big interest in like the big bads and the demons. Like, I should be more scared than I am of them. And so like I go down those rabbit holes and I'm like, ooh.
It's amazing how the stuff you should be scared of is the least scary.
Yeah.
Like I would be that one being thrown through a wall for running my mouth at the demon.
And I'd be like laughing.
I'd be like, oh yeah, bring it.
And,
get thrown through the wall. I'd be like, damn, that
we would
hurts.
we would see you flying across the room, and after we picked our jaws up, we'd start laughing at you like, that's what you get.
Probably. And I'm like, no, I need you to hold this while you're laughing. I need you to say this. And
because I wouldn't have any sympathy for you. I'll be like, you knew what you were getting into.
I own it. That's just
like, pick yourself up off the ground, dust yourself off, and let's get back to work.
I might have oppositional defiance disorder when it comes to the paranormal.
I agree.
So we will be back next Wednesday going over the real Exorcist case that sparked that movie. And the creepy ass, the scariest part of that whole movie is her crab walking upside down the fucking stairs. Like, my kid would be taken out. Like, you can have her go. She's yours now. Nobody does that in this house. Bye-bye.
I've never watched the movie because I don't watch horror movies.
See, I like scary paranormal. I don't like gory horror.
Same.
I only like slashers.
Yeah, you'll never catch me watching like Saw, but like The Conjuring and all of that, I'll watch those. Brandon doesn't like them, so I don't get to watch him very often because even though he's 6'2" and 200 pounds, he's afraid of the paranormal movie. And I'm not. Yeah, exactly. When we go to haunted places, that's like how it is too. I'm like laughing, like walking into places, like looking around, and he's just like, oh.
Can we go now? Can we go? Are we done?
Yeah.
What about now?
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Chris. Thanks. I think we had fun today after missing a couple, and technology seems to be back on the wave with us. So we'll be back next Wednesday at 10. We're going to go over the original Exorcists, or exorcism that the movie The Exorcist, I should say.
Yeah.
Because that's been changed to protect the original person and everything else. But he's out there. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you guys next week. And if you're in the area and you want to go see Emily in person, she's at the store reading today. So you can do a reading with Emily. But thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Thank you. Bye.